On the 13th of January 2026, Mike Pompeo took the stage at the Miriam Institute's Israel security briefing. He told the room the next generation won't remember October the 7th the same way. Then he said the part most speeches leave unsaid. We need to make sure that the story is told properly so that when the history books write this, they don't write about the victims of Gaza. The room applauded. He kept going. I should be a little more precise. There were victims in Gaza, right? He asked. It's true, but the victims were the people of the nation-state of Israel. Western coverage treated it as a gaffe, an undiplomatic moment from a former Secretary of State who'd said worse before. Something to clip, criticize, and move past. But the clip didn't just go viral. It split clean in two in America and Europe. Horror, and in the Muslim world and the global South, something closer to recognition. Not shock, but familiarity. Mike Pompeo wasn't describing a plan. He was describing a habit. In June 2011, the White House's senior counterterrorism advisor, John Brennan, stood at a podium and said that for the past year, there hadn't been a single collateral death from US drone strikes. Due to what he called the exceptional proficiency of the program, independent researchers at the time put the actual civilian toll in the hundreds. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism's figure alone for that period ran into the hundreds of deaths the administration's own claims said didn't exist. The deaths were not absent. The word for them was. This is not a partisan pattern. It survived the change of administration that followed Brennan's. It is bigger than any one official, any one party, any one war. Pompeo didn't invent the habit at the Miriam Institute. He said it out loud. Run the same event through two different vocabularies and watch what happens. A bomb lands on a foreign city. If America dropped it, the word is strike, and the dead besides it are collateral. If it landed on America or American troops or American allies, the word is attack, and the dead are victims. A country that keeps soldiers in over 80 nations across the globe, that is called presence, that is called stability. A smaller nation that stations a handful of troops near a US ally, that is called aggression, that is called destabilization. A formerly colonized nation struggles to industrialize after a century of extraction. The cause offered is corruption, weak institutions, or culture. Rarely the decades of resource extraction that preceded it and continue today unabated. Rarely the debt structures that followed. None of this required a memo. Nobody sat down and built it overnight or in one sitting. It accumulated in news editors' words choices, in textbook captions, in the framing of 1,000 small decisions made deliberately by people who absorbed the same manhaj, in other words, the same ideology. Pompeo's Miriam Institute line did not introduce a new idea into the world. It said a sentence that had already been operating quietly for decades about whose deaths get the word victim and whose get the word casualty. He just said it on camera to applause instead of leaving it where it usually lives, unspoken, in the choice of one word over another. This channel takes its name from a 1916 agreement that fragmented the Muslim world between two empires, which in the conventional narrative is treated as a clumsy and perhaps short-sighted arrangement with no malicious intentions. As we have established on this channel in previous episodes and will continue to do so, this agreement was not innocent. We are witnessing the consequences of this agreement to this day. What the Sykes-Picot Agreement did to the Muslim world, this vocabulary does with language. It decides in advance whose losses count as history and whose are a footnote to someone else's. The Miriam Institute audience did not need Pompeo to explain the framework to them. They were applauding something they already lived inside. The Muslim world and the global south didn't need the speech either, for the opposite reason. They had been on the receiving end of that vocabulary for longer than Mike Pompeo has been alive. Every stability operation, every collateral toll, every nation whose poverty is attributed to their culture and never to the resource extraction, that is the dictionary they grew up reading. What changed on the 13th of January was not the framework. It was that for 90 seconds it got read aloud. The world is complex. The noise is deliberate. The spectrum cuts through it.